got a lot to get to, especially this pile of questions that you guys have given to us. So let's just get started.
We're going to start off with questions. We've changed it up a bit, ladies, but there were a lot of questions, and I want to make sure we got them all covered. So, Miss Anne Marie?
Okay, question number 1. Is the Shulamite, you'd think after 5 weeks I'd be able to say it, Shulamite woman leaning on Solomon in 8:5 because she's old or because her new ideas at the end of chapter 7 worked?
All right. I like that idea, that your new ideas in chapter 7 work. We need to do a word study, and that's what I did. And they're not that hard to do, so I want to encourage all of you ladies, if you have a question like this, to look it up. Look at the word. Now, we learned with the psalm that there were a lot of words in that book that weren't used anywhere else in Scripture. And interestingly enough, this is one of them. Leaning, that word, is only used one time in the entire Old Testament, and it's only used in this book. Isn't that interesting? The word itself means support or take the elbow of somebody. There is no suggestion that she was weary or too old to walk down the road with Solomon. So it really is about a closeness and intimacy. So I'm guessing her new ideas did work.
Okay. Catch the foxes for us. The little foxes that spoil the vineyards in verse 2:15. What does that mean?
How many have foxes at their tables? Y'all got foxes? I bet you could answer what that question means. I think that was submitted before we looked at it last week. But just as a reminder, Solomon and the Shulamite were dating, they were courting, they were walking down the country road. She was distracted, she turned to a field, she saw a fox, which would destroy the vineyards. She turned to Solomon and she said, Solomon, our vineyard, our relationship is blossoming. Will you catch the foxes before they destroy our vineyard? The little problems in our relationship, because she was concerned that she would have him also part of that process of correcting those problems. So every time you see a fox, I want you to think about it. Have you gone home? Have you talked to your spouse about correcting some of those little issues? Or big ones?
Okay. What did the watchman abuse the Shulamite in chapter 5, 6 through 7 when she was out in the dark trying to find Solomon after their fight?
Okay, so you caught me on that one. I didn't teach on that. I skipped those 2 verses. If you remember, there was the argument between Solomon and the Shulamite. She went out looking for him, and we read, it's in chapter 5, verse 7. It says, the watchman found me, the Shulamite, as they went about in the city. They beat me, they bruised me, they took away my veil, those watchmen of the walls. And so somebody caught me, but I didn't skip it because I didn't know the answer. I skipped it because I didn't have enough time to teach on it. The watchmen are mentioned twice in the psalm. Both of them are mentioned in a dream, chapter 3 and chapter 5. In chapter 3, they're mentioned when she's single, she has a dream, she wakes up, he's not there, she runs out into the street looking for him. And she asks them, will you help me? This dream, this is really the argument, the fight that Solomon and the Shulamite had, the sexual adjustment. And so when she went to the door and she opened the door and he wasn't there, we know that she went out into the streets to look for him. And this is where it says that the watchmen found me and they hurt me. Now when you think about dreams, number one, nobody's going to lay a hand on the Shulamite. She was the queen. She was Solomon's queen. So certainly the watchmen are not going to do that. That just doesn't make sense. So in looking at it in the form of a dream, she was feeling guilty. She was feeling bad. She was feeling that she shouldn't have done this. And so she was kind of bringing some of that guilt and self-discipline on herself. I had a girlfriend this morning tell me she's dreamt about me 2 nights, and I thought to myself, I wish she's not mad at me. Because sometimes those things carry over, and I know we've all experienced it in our dreams. So the watchman didn't hurt her, didn't bruise her, didn't molest her. She was dreaming that, okay?
Please describe the differences between lust, passion, and love.
Okay, the difference between lust, passion, and love. You ladies, that's a complicated question. Why are these so complicated? I could take these questions and write a whole lesson on every one of them. Before we get into the answer, I'm going to give you my short answer. We've been talking about total intimacy, haven't we? We've been talking about the colors. There's a book that I did not come up with this idea. I wish I did. But I love the fact that somebody did come up with the idea. Dr. Rosenau, Douglas Rosenau, Dr. Deborah Neal put together the total intimacy. And I ordered about 15 of these. They're on the back table. If you want one, you can pick one up there. It's the first 15 ladies that want it, take it home, or you can go online and order it later. But here he talks about love, the idea of it being three-dimensional. But let's look at the difference between lust, passion, love. Lust, strong desire, strong craving, used 29 times in the scripture. And every time this word is used, it's used in a negative way. Lust is really about self. It's about turning in on something that you desire and that you want with little thought of anybody else or whatever's going on around you. Passion is a strong emotion. Now this emotion can be for something good or it can be for something bad. But passion is an intense emotion. And then love. And this is my short answer. My longer answers to all of these Q&As are going to be posted on the website that we're going to show later as we close out this morning, if you'd like to go there and read it. But when we think of love, I can say that I love ice cream and I love Anne Marie. And in what order? She'd be first. She'd be first. The Greeks have a long list of words that they use to describe love, because love can come in all sorts of different forms. And we, as our English language, we have one. The words that we're familiar with the Greeks is agape, which is unconditional love. It's the love that God has shown us. Eros, which is intimate love, sexual love. Philia, which is love that we have with our friends. But it goes on and on and on at the levels that they talk about. But the real question here is, what's the difference? The difference is lust is about you. The difference is passion is about an intense feeling that you can either have for someone or something or for yourself. And then love, when we talk about it in this environment that we've been talking for the last 5 weeks, it's about sexual love. But God's type of sexual love that involves our body, our mind, and our spirit. It's three-dimensional love. We'll talk about that in the lesson. So I hope that helped clear that.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Okay, next question. Can we really be living God's second choice? I thought every day was ordained for us before we were made in the secret place.
Okay, and I love that question too, and I'll tell you why. Because sometimes when you're up here talking, you might share some things that are misunderstood. And if you remember a couple of lessons ago, I talked about choices. It was when we looked at the voice of choice of the Shulamite. And at the end, we talked about that if you made wrong choices, did you miss God's ideal? Now, you didn't. You didn't miss God's ideal, because I don't believe that there's God's first choice or second choice or third choice. Years ago, we were taught that boy, if you made the wrong choice, you would miss God's perfect plan. I don't see that anywhere in Scripture. And you know why? Because God is sovereign. He's sovereign. He controls it all, and He has purpose. And He may stop me from making some bad choices. He may intervene, but then He may allow me to make some choices too. And then I've got to live with those consequences. But He's going to use those consequences to teach me, to mold me. And so ultimately, we are all living God's ideal, aren't we? Because He uses the struggles in our life. So I'm glad I was able to clear that up.
Okay. Does the Bible affirm an anything goes approach to sexual expression within the bounds of marriage?
All right. I know this comes up a lot. She's my wife or he's my husband. And the wedding band is undefiled. This is the type of question that you have to ask them other questions. And I'm going to do that just to clarify. First off, and again the question, does the Bible affirm anything goes? Well, how does God define marriage? That's the first question. Marriage is between a husband and a wife. And if you want to change that up at all, then that's forbidden. Scripture does not support that. Secondly, what purpose does this type of expression serve in the marriage? You have to discuss it. You have to talk about it. And what purpose does it serve? Coming together in marital intimacy is something where two people are able to connect at an intimate level for the benefit of one another. And you have to discuss it. You have to agree on it. Nobody should be forced. And number three, what motives underline the specific sexual activity? If the motive is generated by curiosity, maybe, where you're involved in watching porn and you want to try something new out, that's forbidden. What is the motive for this type of expression? Does the sexually active activity communicate anything that's contrary to the attitude that we hold with our spouse? Even if the Bible does not prohibit a certain sexual expression, does it degrade our spouse? Does it cause our spouse to feel used? Overall, we are commanded to love one another unconditionally and hold the other up in regard and honor them. So really, overall, there is no such thing as an anything goes in marriage. There just isn't, whether it's in the sexual expression of our love or any otherwise. This is all something that we have to put one another first.
How can I speak without embarrassment of the passion I feel for my husband?
How can I speak without embarrassment for the passion? I love that question. I love that question. You're not alone. In fact, most couples don't talk about sex. And so when they come into my office, I start them off with this. Can you see all that? Well, this is what they want to start off with. It says, not tonight. And then this one says, tonight. And so if they can't talk about sex, we start off with a pillow. But you know what? It really doesn't get them talking either. They just use the pillow. I teach a class called Covenant Lovers. I've had the opportunity to teach it here at the church a couple times. My husband and I teach it. And we have a whole lesson on sexual communication. And we explain to them that if they're not talking about sex, that's okay. Most do not. We talk to our girlfriends about sex. We talk to our mothers or our grandmothers about sex. We don't talk to each other. And so we want to get that dialogue going. We want to normalize it. And there's a handout that I give them. It's called An Evening of Dinner, 52 questions about sex. We start off with appetizers. And then they're very light-hearted questions. They're easy to digest. And then we move through the main course and on to dessert. And I tell them as they sit and they go through these questions, stop if you feel comfortable, but push yourself a little bit. What am I trying to do? Get them to normalize talking about sex. Most wives say, you know, if all I want to do is talk about sex and bring something up, he thinks I want to be sexual that night. I just want to talk about it, and that's okay. We encourage couples to talk before sex, and that not in bed, but before, like the day before, the week before. We encourage them to talk during sex, which can be very difficult, and we encourage them to talk after sex. Why? Because you learn about each other. Because what's in here is spoken, and it makes that connection so much deeper. So if you can't talk about sex now, see me afterwards. I'll give you the handout.
Yeah, I'm thinking the women might want those 52 questions. Are we going to learn why engaged couples should wait?
You know, I've got another book, Soul Virgins. I don't have any but one copy. If you're single, or if you know someone who's single, You need to read this book. It's written by a single man who's never been married, and then also a single man who's been through a divorce. I think he was in his 50s when he wrote this. So it comes from two different perspectives. It's a wonderful book to read and clarifies so much. But this is one of those questions where you have to ask another question before you answer it. And that is, what's your view of God and what he says? What's your view of God and what he says? What lens do you look through when you look at God's Word? My husband and I had a little Chihuahua years ago. We loved him. His name was Charlie. And we used to let him out, run around the yard, enjoy the sun, enjoy the grass, just enjoy the freedom. He was a good guy, and then he'd come back, scratch on the window, we'd let him back in. But one day he didn't come back, and I went looking for him. It was in the fall, in October, I'll never forget. And I went past my grass line where there was a bunch of leaves, and there he was. The coyote had gotten to him. It was terrible. It was terrible. And we brought him in the house, and he passed away. He died. We have another dog. It took me a couple of years. He's a small Yorkie. And when we take him out, we put him on a leash. And not only do we put him on the leash, I hold the leash. I watch over him. And he enjoys the sun. And he runs around the grass. But I watch over him. What lens are you looking through when you read God's Word? God calls sex before marriage fornication. I know that's a hard word, and we don't use it today, do we? But that's what he calls it. And some would say that's a legalistic word, and the Ten Commandments are legalistic words. But you know what? We don't want to be put on a leash. I'm probably one of the most independent people you'll ever meet. I want to run around. I want to enjoy the sun. I want to enjoy the grass. You know the problem with that? I don't know what those coyotes look like. I don't know what form they come in. And God's got me on a leash. And it's a good leash. And it's not to keep me from enjoying life, but to let me and allow me to enjoy life. Now, I know some of you, the person that may have asked this, wants more concrete answers than that. So I'm going to give you just a few. What's the fallout? Research shows that divorce rates among those who live together prior to marriage is much higher than those that didn't. Now, what's up with that? People live together so they can put their toe in the water and figure out if it's going to work for them before they get married. Then they get married, but their divorce rates are higher. Research shows that the #1 diagnosis for men, we talked about this briefly a couple lessons ago, is PE, which is premature ejaculation. This research goes on to say that this condition begins prior to marriage when the guy is involved in premarital sex. Research shows that women who struggle sexually after marriage with the guilt and the shame typically have been very active sexually prior to marriage. So I could go on and on, but we need to listen to the Shulamite when she says to her friends, don't stir up passion until you're ready, because it's for our own good. What lens are we looking through?
We know from Scripture that Solomon had experienced God in his life. What about the Shulamite woman?
I don't know the answer to that. I looked everywhere. I don't know if the Shulamite experienced God. One little side note that was interesting, though, is that, she's only mentioned one time in the Psalm, one time in the whole Bible, and that's chapter 6, verse 13. She's mentioned. But I don't know the answer to that, and I'm going to throw that out back to you and ask whoever wrote that question to do some study and come back. Let me know what they find out.
Okay. Get the next slide.
Okay, there we go.
Some ladies get stuck only receiving affirmation from their spouses. However, there is a strong sense of support from her BFFs. Can you address which avenues we should seek support so our confidence as a woman stays intact?
Well, we're fragile, our self-esteem. Most of us are, if we want to really admit it. I know I am. My affirmation comes from God's Word, ladies. It has to. I'm a child of the King. I'm the bride of Christ, and so are you. And I need to be in God's Word daily. I do not need affirmation. We'd love to have it from our husbands. husbands. We love to have it from our friends. And Scripture teaches us that. I looked at 1 Thessalonians 5:11. It says, therefore encourage one another, build one another up, just like you're doing. And you have been building me up for these last 5 weeks. And I thank you because I needed it. I needed to hear from you. But ultimately, our affirmation comes from the one who created us. That's where we must go.
Okay. Would men accept this teaching from a woman?
Would men accept this teaching from a woman? I don't know, ladies. How about, what do you think? What do you think? All right? You know what? I think men accept this teaching from a woman much easier than women accept it from a man. What do you think? You know, I know if there was a man up here teaching this, I'm not listening to him. He doesn't know what I'm thinking. He probably doesn't. We're right on that. Okay. As a matter of fact, when my husband and I teach covenant lovers, the men respond wonderful. And I teach all but one lesson because it makes him nervous. He's embarrassed, it just makes him nervous. So I think there's 6 lessons. He teaches 1, I teach 5. But the men love it. They want to know what we are thinking. They really, really do. They want to hear from a woman and her approach to it, her gentleness towards this topic of sexual intimacy. So yeah, I think they'll be open to it.
Can you expound more on self-pleasuring and how parents should talk with their teenagers?
You would not let me off of it. You know, I addressed that question about self-pleasure, and somebody stopped me and says, yeah, but what do we tell our kids? Okay, so I promised to get back to it. I want to recommend again Sex Facts for the Family. It's written by the Penners. They're an older couple. These are amazing people. They've been doing this for decades. They travel globally, and there's a whole section on how to talk to your kids. So this book, you've got to get that if you're a parent. Can we expound more on self-pleasure and how parents should talk to their teenagers? You know, teenagers are a different breed, and if you have one, you know it. Young teenagers, preteen. What do we call them? Preteen? Tweens. That's it. We call them tweeners. Tweens and twitters. You guys should just some language out there. Anyway, so let's look at it first. We can't embarrass them. We don't want to cause guilt or shame. What we want to do is look at some of the things they can't control. And they can't control some of the bodily functions that happen, wet dreams. And if that happens, you just walk in there, you step up, and you go help them change the sheets, and you laugh with them over it. Because what you're going to do is create an atmosphere that's comfortable, that maybe later they can come back around and talk to you. And then for the things that they can control, you do need to talk with them. You do need to warn them. And one of the things that they can control is self-pleasure. If this turns into something habitual, they're going to have problems later on in their marriage. That's what we answered last time. But maybe they don't know that. And I'm going to refer to this in my lesson that we're going to get to here in just about 2 minutes because we have to move through these questions. I often wondered why God didn't just have a switch and when we got married, yeah, right. You know what I'm thinking? When we said I do, he flipped it and we had sexual urges. Would that not have been a good idea? I think it would have been a great idea. You know it wouldn't have been a good idea. It was a bad idea. And the reason why, I asked my 16-year-old granddaughter that. I said, honey, why do you think God just doesn't switch? She's so bright. She says, well, then, man, I wouldn't know how to control my urges in marriage. So you can read my notes, girl. She did. She's going to grow up and be a sex therapist. Anyway, if we don't learn how to control our sexual urges as a tween, as a teen, we are not going to control them in marriage. And so all the things that I answered at the last time that I talked about this, about how self-pleasuring turns you away from your mate, how you end up going there instead of working through issues with your spouse. Those things are all going to be carried over into marriage because you've already conditioned yourself to do that. And so talking with your teen about this, what kind of marriage do you want? Because what you're doing now, and we also know that the deeper issue is porn. Because most kids that get involved with habitual self-pleasuring are involved in porn. And we know through studies, and I can't go into it, but viewing porn moves towards sexual addiction in the brain, and then they struggle with it for a lifetime. And they're going to carry that into their marriage. So we need to let the educators and sit down and talk to them about that.
Which brings us to our next question, which is, at what age should you tell your children about sex and where babies come from? And how and what should you tell them?
You know, that's a packed question too. I want you to read chapter 7. We're going to move, we've got one more after this, I think. You're going to start talking to them as early as possible when they start asking questions. And the answers that you give them should be based on where they are, not so much chronologically in their age, but where they are in their emotional age. What can they understand? What can they comprehend? And which leads me into this next question, which is,
how do I start a conversation with my 19-year-old grandson regarding sex?
and the answer to this is, how do I start a conversation with my kids on sex? And I love this because I get to share a couple stories real quick here about my granddaughter again. She came home one day, she was a tween, I think in 6th grade. She said, Nan, I overheard a couple boys in the library and they were telling a dirty joke, a sexual joke. And when I heard that, I knew it was a teaching moment. And so I went off. I started screaming and yelling and carrying on. I was drama all the way through. And she's watching me. And then she finally says, why are you so mad? And I said, because they're taking something God created and they're making it dirty. That opened the door for discussion. And then another time she walked in my office and she saw one of my sex books, Celebrating Sex. She says, Nana, what is this? What do you read? And it was wonderful. And I says, honey, let's sit down. Let's talk about what Nana's reading. Don't plan the talk. Please don't do that to your kids. Look for teaching times, teaching moments, whether they're this size or this size. They're going to bring it up. Buy a sex book and set it out on your table. And if you're a grandma, that's okay. They will think you're really cool. I've got 14 grandkids and they all tell everybody that their dad is a sex therapist. Yesterday, my little 8-year-old was over. And I mentioned something to him about sex and he shivered. It was really funny. God will give you those opportunities. And he'll give you the words. And we're going to close with this. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Because we need to learn about what we need to say. When they do have the opportunity, when you do have the opportunity, and this just isn't for parents, moms, dads, it's for grandmas, grandpas. So we spent a good portion of this morning answering various questions. If I didn't get to yours, there's going to be a website. It's going to be up on the screen as we close out this morning. And you can go there and you can view all of the Q&As that this study generated and the longer answers. But there were a couple questions that I wanted to bring forward this morning as we meet for the last time. And that is, why did we ask you to wear something white? By the way, you all look great. The real reason is I wanted to wear my jacket. You like it? Beautiful, isn't it? The answer really is simple. It doesn't matter if you're single and dating, if you're married, if you're widowed, if you're divorced. If you call Christ Lord, God's word tells you that you are his bride. You are his bride. Revelation 19:7 says, let us rejoice and exalt and give him the glory. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. We are his bride. And I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to the day when I can look at my bridegroom face to face. In the meantime, I'm celebrating that I'm his bride. And that's what we're doing this morning. Is this not the best? This isn't over the top. This is first class. And it's to remind us that we are the bride of Christ. We're also asked to wear white because we've been studying for the last 4 weeks about a bride, and that's been the Shulamite maiden. We want to celebrate her. We've been looking at her relationship with Solomon, how they met, their courting time, their wedding day, their honeymoon, their early adjustments in marriage when they were first married, and later on in life. And we've been focusing specifically on the sexual relationship. What was her perspective? What were her choices? What was her advice to her BFFs, the daughters of Jerusalem, and ultimately to us? She opened up a whole conversation on sex, and I know y'all been talking about sex because I've been eavesdropping on these tables. I think some of you here probably talk more about sex in the last 4 weeks than you have in 10 years. Maybe some of us 20. Which tells me we need to keep this sex talk going. Can't say that. We need to keep it going. Which brings me to another set of questions. How do we do that? Who do we talk to, and what are we going to say to them? Because that's the question. If somebody comes up and talks to me, what am I going to say? Today we're going to look at what to say. If you'll turn to page, I think it's on page 25 of your workbook, we do have blanks to fill in on what to say. So we're going to leave the song just for a bit, and we're going to focus on the broader picture of why God created sex. And if he created it, it was his idea. It must be good for us. Why is it good for us? This is a really need-to-know topic. And I don't think anybody in this room would disagree with me on this. That's why you're here in the middle of the summer, when it's 80 degrees outside. And you could be out laying on the deck or having coffee with your friends. You're here because this is a need-to-know topic. We know what culture does, don't we? All they do is focus on the pleasure aspect of sex. And let me tell you something, ladies, and I'll admit it. If sex is only for pleasure, then we should be having it as often as we can with whomever we can. The fact of the matter is, there's so much more. And we need to intervene in our culture's thinking that it's only about pleasure. Our understanding of why God created sex, it's going to drive our attitudes. It's going to cause us to make certain choices. And our kids, they're getting the message, it's for pleasure, and don't get pregnant. Have fun, but don't get pregnant. We need to intervene and talk to them and tell them why God created sex, because it's forming their attitudes right now. 8 years old, 10 years old, 20 years old. And we need to have an answer for them. We need to have a better understanding for us, because it helps us make sense of some of our struggles with our sexuality, and ultimately it's going to strengthen our marriage. So this morning we're going to be covering the 5 P's of the purpose of sex. Now let's look at the most obvious reason, procreation. Purpose number 1, procreation. Psalm chapter 2, verse 5, we learned about raisin cakes. I don't think y'all can look at raisin cakes the same way anymore. We learned that raisin cakes were aphrodisiacs, they're love enhancers. We also learned that way back with King David, when they were at war, but they finally came to peace, and all the soldiers came home, he gave them a loaf of bread, he gave them a piece of meat, and he gave them a raisin cake, and he sent them home. And the message was, go have a good dinner with your kids and your family, and then go have productive sex. The raisin cake, meaning the seeds, go make some babies. Did you know that the first commandment that God gave Adam and Eve was to be productive? We read in Genesis 1, 27 through 28, so God created in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So God's first commandment, go have sex and make babies. In Genesis 4:1 tells us, now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. That word knew is a Hebrew word, yada. Now we use that word in our English language pretty casual, but the Israelite of the Old Testament didn't. Yada would mean, I really knew that person. I intimately knew that person. I knew sexually. And that word continues to be used in the following scriptures, would always confirm that the wife conceived and brought forth a child. So God created sex for procreation. That was a pretty easy one, isn't it? I know you're going to wait for the other four. God created sex for more than just being fruitful and multiplying, though, ladies. And that's number 2. God created sex for pleasure. He created sex for pleasure. Our culture has that one right. It's about all they have right. It's all but impossible to rest on the assumption that God only created sex for procreation. Because if he did, if that's all the reason that he created sex, then we could reasonably assume that every time there was a sexual act, there'd be a pregnancy. And we know that just doesn't happen. God did create sex for pleasure, for physical enjoyment. But historically, church leaders and institutions have tried to say that sexual pleasure is sinful. Martin Luther, quoting Martin Luther, intercourse is never without sin, but God excuses it by his grace because the estate of marriage is at work. Peter Lombard, which was a respected theologian in the 20th century, he says the Holy Spirit leaves the room when a married couple have sex. Isn't that interesting? I thought that was pretty, blew me away. Adam Lee, he pulls from a religious literature on the subject, and he's quoted as saying, sexual pleasure within marriage becomes unnatural. And it can even be harmful with spouses when it is used in a way that deliberately excludes the basic purpose of sex, which is procreation. Now, these views contradict Scripture, straight up. They ignore the full Word of God, because if sex is only for procreation and you're not supposed to have pleasure, we need to cut out and get rid of the whole Song of Songs. Because in the Song of Solomon, it's rich in sexual content. We've learned that. And there is no mention of children. There is no mention of children. But for some people, and I know none of you are like that out there, but some people would disregard the Song of Solomon's message. They would even argue, Judy, that it doesn't belong in the canon, right? There was debate back and forth whether the song should even be in the canon. So let's just remove the song. Let's look at something else that can't be answered. And that's our human body possesses certain parts that bring great sexual pleasure. God created in us erogenous zones that have one purpose and one purpose only, and that is pleasure. If God did not create sex for pleasure, then these erogenous zones would have no purpose. There are thousands of nerve endings in the sexual areas or parts of our body that were created to enjoy pleasure. So having said that, not only does Scripture support that God created sex for pleasure, our bodies support that, and He created us. So having said that, they're guidelines, and we know that they're guidelines. And the third purpose of why God created sex helps us stay within those guidelines, and that is purpose 3. God created sex for pair bonding. God created sex for pair bonding. This is huge to teach our kids, ladies. If they don't learn anything else, you need to teach them that God created sex for pair bonding. Our sexual organs of both men and women do have the capacity to enjoy the full level of sexual pleasure, but also to create a oneness. Jesus refers to it in Mark chapter 10, verses 7 through 9, when he says, "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother, hold fast to his wife. The two shall become one flesh, so they are no longer two, but one flesh." This is Jesus. He's quoting Genesis, actually. This one flesh connection occurs as a result of sexual activity. This is biblical sex, ladies. I love this illustration. When you become sexually active, you are bonded to that person. You become bonded to that person. You are glued to that person. How does this happen? Well, physically, when a man and a woman reach sexual excitement, several powerful drugs, chemicals, several powerful chemicals are released in the brain that researchers say produce a pair bonding connection. Oxytocin, which is one of those powerful chemicals. Do you love this? If you can't see it back there, it says oxytocin. Oxytocin, which is one of these powerful chemicals that's released during sexual activity, releases in the brain of a woman and causes her to feel very bonded with that partner that she's been sexually active with. Now, with a man, which is really interesting, I would have thought it would have been more of a woman. With a man, his highest level of released oxytocin is when he reaches full sexual excitement. He is bonding with that person that he is being sexual with. In their book, I love what Mark and Faith Driscoll wrote in their book, Real Marriage. A faithfully married couple with a free and frequent sex life are literally bonded together as one physically and chemically by God's design. Physically and chemically, we are bonded together. So why would God choose to have pair bonding take place? Well, the obvious reason is so we can connect at an intimate level. But I found this really interesting. It's good for the economy. Yeah, sex is good for the economy within marriage. Pair bonding serves several areas that sustain civilizations. When you pair bond with somebody within marriage, you build a strong commitment. You build a home, you have children, and you have an environment that's healthy that can raise up those kids. When you pair bond with somebody, you're not going through life alone. You have someone to lean on, as the Shulamite was leaning on Solomon. It's not so difficult. It lowers stress and anxiety to facing some of the difficulties in life alone. Pair bonding even supports social currency. It provides stability within subcultures. All this because of sexual connectedness. God knew what he was doing. And when this pair bonding is broken, whether it's divorce, whether it's living together and now you no longer decide to continue doing that, you break up, the couple encounters great distress. I think most of you would agree. Divorce is number 2 on the scale of how much stress and depression it can cause, with death being number 1. And I've heard many divorced people tell me they think it should be 1, not 2. The families of origin, the extended families suffer, and stability within the subculture suffers if it happens too much. God created us for community, and you know why? Because community builds strength. And we talk about community all the time with women, and we're having community here, but it starts with families. It starts with pair bonding, and from there it grows out. And he created us to pair bond. What about the hookup generation? They seem to be doing okay, not really. There are consequences to having multiple partners, pair bonding with too many. The warning found in 1 Corinthians 6:18, there's a lot of warnings, but this one has always cut to my core. It says, flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexual immoral person sins against their own body. Now, there's a lot of things that we can cover about sexual immorality, but let's just talk about having orange with too many partners. What happens? My granddaughter did all this for me. That's why she's going to be a sex therapist. I wanted to have like 10. And she says, Nana, we got to stop. So I got 4 up here. If I'm this pink one here and I'm pair bonded with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, you know what? I'm going to leave part of me with that person I'm pair bonded with. I'm going to continue being connected with too many people. Because these powerful chemicals, these powerful hormones get released. You don't get to turn them off. They're all going to be part of my life, in my mind, in my emotions. More often than not, I have people come to my office and they're caught up with people that they were sexual with prior to marriage. And they become bigger than life, and they compare them with their spouse, and their spouse can't measure up with this person that really doesn't exist. They can't get away from them. And if you pair bond with too many people, the emotional bonding capability diminishes. And you know what happens? Sex becomes sex. It just becomes the act. Research is showing that normal release of that bonding chemistry in men, if they are not in a committed relationship with the person that they are having sex with, if they do it too much, that chemistry or that bonding hormone is diminished. And in fact, cortisol, which is our stress hormone, is released more, which causes a lot of anger. So how do we do singleness without sinning against our own body when you're talking to your kids? You tell them all this. You tell them what I just answered in the question. Learn to manage your sexual urges. What kind of marriage do you want? Don't get caught up in porn, because that's where you'll go when you're having trouble in your marriage. Don't get caught up in habitual self-pleasuring, because that's where you will go. Don't get caught up with having multiple partners, because you won't be able to shake them. Do married couples sin against their body? Yes, they do. Listen up. We have more porn among women than we've had in decades, we never had in the history. And these emotional relationships with guy friends at work, you know, my husband just doesn't talk to me. And we're not doing anything. But he just understands. Ladies, if you're out there and you have a guy friend and you're talking to that guy friend, be it texting, email, at work, over lunch, you break that off. And whatever you're talking to him about, you go home and talk to your husband, even if all he does is grunt. Okay? Affairs sin against our body. It's not a sin outside. It's a sin against our body. Proverbs 6:27-35 talks about it. I'm going to change the gender up. Can a woman carry fire in her chest and her clothes not be burned? She who commits adultery lacks sense. She who does it destroys herself. My heart breaks for the women that come to my office and have made that decision, because I know how hard it's going to be for them to heal. My husband and I have done lots of affair work through the years. And it takes a lot of work. But God is merciful and He's forgiving. But they have to be willing to forgive one another. They have to be willing to heal one another. And we need to tell our kids. We need to tell our teenagers, you don't want to do this. It hurts too much. That's the message we need to send our kids. Which brings us to the fourth reason why God created sex. Protection. He created it for procreation. He created it for pleasure. He created it for pair bonding. And He created it for protection. We did learn, and I think that's one of the main things I think you're going to go home with on this study, the argument that Solomon and the Shulamite had. It was over a sexual issue. But you know what I didn't teach you because we didn't have time? Chapter 6, starting in verse 4, how they made up. They didn't waste time. They made up, and they delighted in one another shortly after that conflict. They didn't deprive one another sexually. 1 Corinthians 7:5, Paul teaches the early church what marital intimacy should look like. And I got to give you a little bit of background because then it'll mean more to you than just me reading the scripture. Last winter we did a study, Live Full, Walk Free in 1 Corinthians with Cindy Boltwood. She talked about what Corinth, the ancient city of Corinth, was like. It was had a population of about 650,000 people, Romans, Greeks, Jews. It was in a strategic location. There were 2 active harbors. Everybody came into the city in those days. And when they came in, they brought with them all of their stuff. So the city itself became very indulgent. It became very immoral. And where do you think Paul ends up building a church? Smack in the middle of the city of Corinth. And so he brings these small group of believers together, and they begin learning God's word and growing as a Christian. And then he leaves, as he always did, on his other missionary journeys, and they wrote to him. You know what they wrote to him? They were struggling with sexual sin. And so Paul writes back to them, and he gives them instructions on it. And he says, and this is my favorite verse, chapter 7, verse 5, it says, "Do not deprive one another," referring to marital sex, "except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourself to prayer and then come back together again." Paul was keenly aware of the fact that they were struggling. Why? Because they were in a city. They'd come out of that city. They were raised in a sexual immoral environment. And now they not only had their baggage that they were bringing into their marriages, but then they had all the temptations around them. He was keenly aware of their struggle. And you know what? God's keenly aware of our own struggle. We live in a sexually immoral culture. And so he wrote, through the Holy Spirit's inspiration, Paul instructs everyone how to protect their marriage. And you know what it boiled down to? Have marriage sex often. It's not like what Ruth Johnson, remember her at the beginning of our lesson, the very first? What did she say? Give little, give seldom, and above all, give grudgingly. Yeah. That's what the young women were being told way back then. It caused so many problems. And Paul goes on to say, if you choose to refrain, if you pull back, make sure it's only for a short time. Why? So that Satan will not tempt you because of the lack of self-control. So that Satan will not tempt you, because Paul understood that there are temptations all around us. Now, please know, ladies, there is no excuse for sexual sin. Every one of us need to be accountable for our own behavior. But there are a lot of factors that feed in to the temptation for sexual sin. There's 3 reasons why to refrain. When both of you have mutual consent to refrain from having sex, when it is only for a short period of time, and when the purpose is to devote oneself to prayer. I shared that with a client, and as she walked out, she opened the door and she looked back to me and she says, "I'm going to be devoting myself to prayer a lot." It's good. Healthy sexual relationships with a marital union, it protects, it builds the pair bonding and the oneness, which leads me to the final reason that God created sex. Genesis 1:31 says, God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. Now we know this is the chapter on creation, that there are verses that say, God created this and it was good. God created this, it was good. It was good, it was good. But at the end of that chapter, he looks at everything and he says, it is very good. Everything. God created sex for praise. God created sex for praise. Marital intimacy is very good. It deserves our praise because it allows us to come together with another person at an intimate level. And did you know that the marital relationship is set aside from any other relationship that we enjoy? It's set set aside from the relationships with our kids. We have relationships with our kids, we have relationships with our BFFs, we have relationships with our coworkers, but the marital relationship is different. And it's different because of marital intimacy. And we need to protect that. And then finally, sex is very good and deserves our praise because it's a picture of Christ and his bride, the church. Now, I know for some that's going to be a radical view towards viewing marital intimacy as being a picture of Christ and the church. Ladies, I'm right up there with you. It took me a long time to wrap my mind around that. But we have to remember something. It is not uncommon for God to use pictures to help us understand something that is beyond ourselves. He did it with the ordinances that he gave the church. When you think about baptism, baptism is a picture of the death and the burial and the resurrection of Christ. Communion is a picture of the broken body and the shed blood of Christ on the cross. In Ephesians chapter 5, verses 31 and 32, Paul writes, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, hold fast to his wife. The two shall become one flesh." And this is the point. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. So Paul is saying, two, husband and wife will come together, the two shall be one, and it's a picture of Christ and the church. And that's something to give praise about. He wraps up his treatment on marriage by calling it a profound mystery. And I don't fully understand it, ladies. But while we cannot fully understand God's intention for marital intimacy, we can rest on the fact and the truth that he called it very good. There's a battle going on between God, when he teaches on sex, and what Satan wants us to believe about sex. Sex is important to God, but it's important to Satan. And it's important to Satan because it's where he can cast guilt and shame. He can cast abuse, distortions. And if he can successfully impact a culture's attitude or a culture's view of sex, if he can successfully impact our kids' view of sex, then he can change and reshape governments and reshape laws. We're seeing that happen already. And he can convince even the most dedicated Christian that God doesn't have the authority to speak into our sex life, and he does. Every one of us. Whether you're single, whether you're married, he has the authority to speak into our sex life, and he uses the voice of the Shulamite maiden to do that. So as we close out this morning, I would challenge you. I want to challenge you to live out what you have learned these last few weeks. Will you do that? Live her legacy. God put it there for us to learn from. And then leave a legacy. Would you leave a legacy with your kids and with your grandkids, with your friends? I had one lady come up to me this morning. She says, I've told 3 of my friends all this stuff. She's leaving a legacy. We need to be change agents in a culture that has deified sex and made it a mini god. In a church that won't even talk about it. Are we talking sex? Yeah. And at Woodside lets us do it. Let's keep going. How do we do it? By faith. Ladies, by faith. That's what I did. By faith. I just took one step. And I trusted the God who I've trusted my salvation in. Psalms 33, 3-4 tells us to sing to him a new song. For the word of the Lord is upright, and all his work is done in faithfulness. All his work, how we were created. All his work, our sexuality, all his work, his purposes for marital sex, all have been completed faithfully by our bridegroom.